Divorce lawyers, what's the worst way you've seen someone over their spouse? I've always been a lawyer, but never the kind who deals with divorce cases. Yet here I am, tangled in the mess of my brother's disintegrating marriage. Let me tell you about my brother Tim and his soon-to-be ex-wife Janet. They were married for over 30 years, a lifetime together, and now it's all crumbling down. It started off like any other story you've heard. Janet met someone else. People change, feelings fade, and new attractions happen. It's not uncommon, right? But the thing that tore Tim apart wasn't the new guy. It was something far more insidious. Our parents, bless their hearts, are not well off. They live modestly, always have. But they believed in the importance of education, so every month, without fail, they put a little money into a savings account for Tim and Janet's son, David. This wasn't just pocket change. It was meant for his future, his college fund, a way out of the financial struggle that our family has always known. The account was set up in David's name, but with Janet as the sole trustee. My parents trusted her completely. She was family after all. No one ever thought she would do anything to harm David's future, but divorce brings out the worst in people. When Janet left, she didn't just leave Tim heartbroken. She emptied David's savings account. Every last cent. Years of my parents' sacrifices, gone in an instant. For Tim, this was the ultimate betrayal. Sure, he could deal with her leaving him, finding someone else. But robbing their son of his future? That was unforgivable. I remember the day Tim found out. He was sitting in my office, a shell of the man I used to know. His eyes were hollow, and his hands trembled as he handed me the bank statement. "She took it all," he whispered, as if saying it any louder would break him. We sat in silence for a long time. What could I say? No legal jargon or comforting words could fix what had been done. I felt an anger bubbling inside me, not just as a lawyer, but as a brother, and as an uncle to David. How could she do this to her own son? Tim and I decided to confront Janet together. We drove to her new place, a cozy apartment she had rented after moving out. She opened the door, surprised to see us standing there. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice cold. Tim didn't waste any time. "How could you take David's money? That's for his education, Janet. Our parents sacrificed so much for him." Janet crossed her arms, her expression unyielding. "I needed the money. I have a right to it." "A right?" Tim's voice cracked. "That money wasn't for you. It was for David." She shrugged. "He's young. He has time to figure things out. I needed it now." The conversation went in circles, anger and hurt on both sides. Janet was unapologetic, insisting that she did what she had to do. Tim was devastated, unable to comprehend how the woman he loved for decades could betray their son so callously. We left, defeated. Tim looked like a man who had lost everything, and in a way, he had. Over the next few weeks, he tried to keep it together, but the betrayal weighed heavily. He started drinking more, missing work, and isolating himself from friends and family. I knew I had to do something, not just as his brother, but as someone who loved him. I spent more time with him, trying to help him see that there was a way forward, even if it didn't feel like it right now. We talked about David's future and how we could rebuild the savings, brick by brick. And so, we started the painful process of picking up the pieces. Tim filed for divorce, and I helped him navigate the legal maze. It wasn't easy, but slowly he began to see a glimmer of hope. We opened a new account for David, this time with both Tim and I as trustees. Our parents continued to contribute, even though it was harder for them now. Legally, we were at a standstill. Janet claimed she believed the money was for David's everyday expenses, clothing, days out, that sort of bollocks. My parents already chipped in for those things, more than they could afford. The truth was clear. She spent it on her new life with that unemployed bum, a man who'd left his own wife and 3 kids to be with her. My parents had savings accounts for all their grandchildren, including my own kids. We all knew the money was meant for college fees or a home deposit, something to give them a leg up in life. Janet's actions were morally repugnant, but legally, my parents had no recourse. The law didn't recognize their informal arrangement. Law didn't. There was one small victory. In the divorce settlement, Tim's lawyer insisted on a clause about the money Janet had taken. She was forced to either justify herself to a judge or make concessions elsewhere. She chose the latter, giving up her claims on other financial matters. It wasn't full restitution, but it was something. It wasn't. We opened a new account for David. My parents started contributing again, and my husband and I pitched in too. It's heartbreaking that we had to start from scratch, but at least we had a plan. David, caught in the middle of all this, was our priority. Janet's life began unraveling. Her new relationship was already on the rocks. The unemployed guy turned out to be just as unreliable as you'd expect. Their fairy tale romance quickly soured under the pressure of real-life responsibilities. Meanwhile, Tim slowly started to rebuild. He focused on his relationship with David, working hard to make up for the lost time and the emotional turmoil. It wasn't easy. There were days when he was overwhelmed by the sheer weight of it all, but he kept going, one step at a time. David, bless his heart, was resilient. Despite everything, he excelled in school and stayed hopeful about his future. We all rallied around him, showing him that while his mother's actions were unforgivable, he still had a family who loved him fiercely. I'd like to say Janet's troubles ended there, but they didn't. She bounced from job to job, struggling to find stability. Her new partner left her, predictably, and she was left to pick up the pieces of a shattered life. Part of me felt vindicated, but mostly I felt sad for David. He didn't deserve any of this. As time went on, Tim and David forged a new path. They found a rhythm, a new normal. Tim met someone new, a kind, patient woman who understood his past and embraced his future. They took things slow, careful not to repeat old mistakes. For the first time in a long while, Tim seemed genuinely happy. David's new savings account grew steadily. My parents, despite their limited means, continued to contribute faithfully. My husband and I did our part. And even Tim's new partner chipped in occasionally. It became a symbol of hope, a tangible sign that we were moving forward. Life didn't magically become perfect. There were still tough days, moments of doubt and anger, but we learned to navigate them together. The bond between us strengthened, forged in the fires of hardship.